At my daughter's wedding, my son-in-law grabbed the microphone right out of my hand in front of 180 guests and said, "Thanks, Walter, we need to keep this moving," while my own daughter just looked down at her plate and pretended she didn't see. It happened. I did not argue. I did not cause a scene. I simply reached into my jacket pocket and pressed play on my phone, which was already connected to the DJ's sound system. What came out of those speakers next made my daughter drop her champagne glass and made 180 people go completely silent. My name is Walter Hendricks. I am 67 years old, and before I tell you exactly how a father who paid $47,000 for his only daughter's wedding ended up being silenced at his own table, tell me something. Where are you tonight, and what time does that clock on your wall say right now? I always like knowing who's sitting with me while I talk. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had family treat your patience like it was the same thing as your weakness. Now, let me tell you what happened in Asheville, North Carolina, 3 weeks ago, and how I made sure the whole room heard the truth. I spent 38 years building Hendricks Roofing and Supply from one truck and a ladder into 9 locations across 2 states. My late wife, Lorraine, used to say I could spot a weak roof from 3 blocks away just by the way the shingles were laying. She was right about most things. God rest her. She'd been gone 4 years now, taken by cancer on a quiet Sunday morning, and I still set 2 coffee mugs on the counter every morning out of habit before I remember. My daughter Emily was our only child. She was 29, smart, kind, the kind of girl who used to sit on a 5-gallon bucket in my workshop and hand me nails while I talked about flashing and pitch. I loved her more than any roof I ever built, and I told her so the day she got engaged to a man named Jason Cole. Jason was 31, worked in real estate development, always in a blazer that was a little too tight, always talking about leverage and scaling, and other words that sound impressive until you ask what they actually mean. I didn't like him from the first handshake, not because he was rude, but because he was too smooth. And a man who is too smooth at 31 has usually been practicing on people who trusted him. But Emily loved him, and Lorraine always told me that a father's job is to love who his daughter loves until they give you a reason not to. So I paid for the wedding, not half, all of it, $47,000, because Emily said she wanted one perfect day, and after losing her mother, I wanted to give her that. The venue was the Whitmore estate, a big white barn with string lights, 180 guests, open bar, live band, the kind of wedding that looks like a magazine. I handled the deposit myself, wrote the check from my personal account, the same account Lorraine and I had used for 32 years. Jason's parents contributed nothing, but they had plenty of opinions. They wanted a different seating chart, different menu, a different time for the toasts. Jason wanted to approve all speeches beforehand for timing, he said, for flow. I thought that was strange. In 38 years of business, I never once asked a man to approve what he was going to say before he said it, but Emily asked me to go along with it, so I sent him a draft of my speech. It was 3 minutes long. It talked about Lorraine, about how she would have loved to see Emily in that dress, about how proud I was, about how marriage is like roof, you have to maintain it or it leaks. Jason wrote back, looks great, Walter. Maybe trim the part about Lorraine, keep it upbeat. I didn't trim it. I kept it exactly the way it was. That should have been my first warning. The second warning came 2 weeks before the wedding, on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at the Whitmore estate for the final walkthrough with the wedding coordinator, a sharp young woman named Claire. We were testing the microphone at the head table when my phone rang. It was the DJ, a kid named Marcus who I'd hired and paid for because Emily wanted a live DJ and not a playlist. Marcus said, "Mr. Hendricks, weird question, but did you send me a new voicemail to play during the speeches?" I said, "No, I didn't send anything." He said, "I got a voicemail from your number, or at least it says it's from you, saying you want to cancel your speech and play a song instead. Just want to confirm." My stomach dropped. I had not sent anything. I told Marcus to forward me whatever he got. 5 minutes later, it hit my inbox. It was a voicemail, but it wasn't from me. It was Jason. He had spoofed my number. I know what spoofing is because my company got hit with it once a supplier faked our number to get a discount. In the voicemail, Jason's voice, that smooth type blazer voice, said, "Hey Marcus, it's Walter Hendricks, Emily's dad. Hey, I've decided to skip my speech at the wedding. Just play Brown-Eyed Girl after the best man, thanks. Sorry for the late notice." It was him, no doubt. Same cadence, same fake friendliness. He was trying to erase my speech without me even knowing. I saved that voicemail. I sent it to myself twice. Once to my email, and once to a cloud folder I keep for important documents, the same folder where I kept Lorraine's medical records and the deed to our house. Then I called Marcus back and I told him the truth. I told him that was not me, that someone was trying to cancel my speech, and that I wanted him to do something for me. Something very specific. I asked him, "Can you connect a phone to your sound system via Bluetooth and play whatever is on that phone loud enough for 180 people to hear?" He said, "Yes, easily. I do it for first dances all the time." I said, "Good. On the wedding day I am going to hand you my phone. When I nod, I want you to play whatever is on the screen. No questions. Can you do that?" He said, "Mr. Hendricks, that sounds serious. Are you okay?" I said, "I will be. Just be ready." Then I started digging, because a man who will fake your phone number to cancel your speech 2 weeks before your daughter's wedding is a man who has done other things and is not good at hiding them anymore. I hired a private investigator, a man named Ron, who I used to hire to check on job sites. When I suspected theft, I gave him Jason's full name, his business name, Cole Development Group, and I told him to look for anything lawsuits, liens, complaints. Ron called me back in 48 hours. What he found made my $47,000 wedding bill look like pocket change. Jason's development group had 3 active lawsuits from investors who said he took their money and never built anything. He owed $280,000 to a contractor in Raleigh who had put a lien on one of his properties, and he had a voicemail habit. Ron found a former fiancée, a woman named Sarah from Charlotte, who said Jason used to leave her long, bragging voicemails about how he was going to marry into money and how his future father-in-law had a roofing empire and a paid-off house and no idea how to protect it. She had saved one of those voicemails. She sent it to Ron, and Ron sent it to me. I listened to it alone in my workshop, with the door closed, the same workshop where Emily used to hand me nails. In that voicemail, Jason, drunk, laughing with a friend in the background, said, "Once I marry Emily, old Walt will pay for everything. The wedding, the house down payment, the whole thing." He built 9 locations. Man, he's loaded, but he's soft. He'll write a check for anything if Emily cries a little, and after the wedding, I'm cutting him off. No more. Speeches, no more dad stories about his dead wife. It's my family now. He's just the wallet. He called me soft. He called Lorraine his dead wife, like she was a footnote. He called my daughter a tool to get to my checkbook. I sat in that workshop for a long time with Lorraine's photo on the wall, and I felt something cold and quiet settle in my chest. Not rage. Rage is noisy. This was clarity. The same clarity I felt when I used to climb a roof and know exactly where the leak was, just by the way the plywood felt under my boots. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I did not tell Emily, not yet, because Emily was 29 and in love, and she would not have believed me if I had played that voicemail for her in my kitchen. She needed to hear it the way Jason intended everyone to hear my silence in front of 180 people when it mattered. So I waited for the wedding day. The morning of the wedding was perfect blue sky, 72 degrees. The kind of day Lorraine would have called a painting day. Emily looked beautiful, truly beautiful, in a dress that cost more than my first truck, and when she hugged me before the ceremony, she whispered, "Thanks for everything, Dad." I said, "You deserve everything, sweetheart." I meant it. The ceremony was short. The pastor talked about love and foundation. I thought about roofs again. Then the reception started. String lights, band playing, champagne flowing, 180 people laughing, dancing, eating steak that I had paid for $140 plate. I sat at the head table next to my sister, my brother, Emily's best friend from college, and I waited for the toasts. The best man went first. Jason's brother, a louder, dumber version of Jason, talked about Vegas and strip clubs in front of Emily's grandmother. Then the maid of honor, sweet, crying, talked about Emily in college. Then Claire, the coordinator, looked at me and said, "Mr. Hendricks, would you like to say a few words?" I stood up. I had my speech folded in my jacket pocket, 3 minutes, handwritten, with the part about Lorraine still in it. I had my phone in my other pocket, already connected to Marcus, the DJ's Bluetooth screen, open to that voicemail from Sarah's phone, the one where Jason calls me soft and calls Lorraine his dead wife and says he's cutting me off. I took the microphone from Claire and I said, "For those who don't know me, I'm Walter, Emily's dad." I got 4 words into my speech. I have known Emily since. That was as far as I got. Jason stood up from his chair at the other end of the head table, walked the 8 feet to where I was standing, smiled, that tight blazer smile, and put his hand out for the microphone. "Thanks, Walter, we need to keep this moving," he said, loud enough for the first 3 tables to hear, but quiet enough to sound polite. He pulled the mic from my hand. He didn't grab, he pulled like he was taking a tool from an apprentice. Emily looked down at her plate. Her shoulders went up like she wanted to disappear into her dress. 180 people went quiet because everyone in that barn knew what had just happened. An old man being silenced at his daughter's wedding by the groom he had just paid $47,000 to celebrate. Jason turned to the crowd and said, "On behalf of Emily and myself, we want to thank everyone for being here." I did not let him finish. I looked at Marcus, the DJ, standing by his table with my phone in his hand, and I nodded once, the same nod I used to give my foreman when a roof was ready to be topped. Marcus pressed play for half a second. Nothing happened. Then Jason's own voice, drunk, laughing, cruel, came out of 6 speakers at 100 decibels in a barn built to make sound carry. "Once I marry Emily, old Walt will pay for everything. The wedding, the house down payment, the whole thing. He built 9 locations. Man, he's loaded, but he's soft. He'll write a check for anything if Emily cries a little. And after the wedding, I'm cutting him off. No more speeches, no. More dad stories about his dead wife. It's my family now. He's just the wallet. You could hear a fork drop. Actually, you did hear a fork drop. Someone at table 4 dropped theirs, and it clanged against a plate like a bell. Emily's head snapped up. She stared at the speaker above the bar, like it was a ghost. Jason froze, microphone still in his hand, face going from tan to white to green in the space of 3 seconds. The voicemail kept playing, Sarah's voice in the background, the friend laughing, Jason saying, "He's just the wallet." I let it play twice. I had told Marcus to loop it if needed. He looped it. Second time around, people started whispering, then not whispering. Emily stood up. Her chair scraped back, loud enough to hurt your ears. She looked at Jason and she said, so quietly that the microphone picked it up because Jason was still holding it, "What did you say about my mother?" Jason tried to talk, stammering, That's old, that's taken out of context." But Marcus, bless him, played the second voicemail. I had given him the one where Jason faked my number to cancel my speech. "Hey Marcus, it's Walter Hendricks, Emily's dad. Hey, I've decided to skip my speech." Now everyone knew. This wasn't a one-time drunk mistake. This was a pattern. Man who would fake a father's voice to steal his speech is a man who would do anything. Emily's grandmother, Lorraine's mother, 82 years old, stood up at table 1 and said, loud and clear, without a microphone, "Get your hands off my granddaughter's husband's microphone, young man." She meant Jason. She was pointing at Jason, telling him to get his hands off me. The room broke, not into chaos, into truth. Jason's parents, who had contributed nothing but opinions, tried to leave through the side door, but Ron, my investigator, was standing there, not blocking, just standing with a folder in his hand, the folder with the 3 lawsuits and the $280,000 lien. Emily walked to me, tears running through her makeup, and she hugged me hard in front of everyone. While she was still in her wedding dress, she said, "Why didn't you tell me, Dad?" I said, "You needed to hear it for yourself, sweetheart, not from me, from him." Jason left the barn, not through the front, through the kitchen, past the catering staff, who had heard everything, past the $47,000 worth of food he didn't pay for. His brother followed him, carrying the microphone he had stolen from me like it was evidence. The band didn't know what to play, so they didn't play anything. For a long, beautiful, honest minute, where 180 people just stood and looked at a father and a daughter hugging in the middle of a barn that the father had paid for, and finally understood who had actually built this family and who had just been trying to cash in on it. I will tell you what happened in the weeks after, because the fallout, once it starts, moves on its own. Emily annulled the marriage 9 days later, a quick, quiet annulment, because the marriage had never been real in the way that matters. Jason's investors, hearing about the wedding incident because someone at table 6 filmed it and sent it to one of the contractors he owed, moved forward with their lawsuits, and his development group folded within a month. He moved back to Charlotte, and last I heard, he was selling used cars with that same tight blazer and that same smooth talk to people who don't know to check voicemails. Emily and I are rebuilding slowly, honestly. She moved back home for 3 months, slept in her old room, the one with the glow-in-the-dark stars I put on the ceiling when she was 6. We had coffee together every morning, 2 mugs again, but this time both of us drinking She apologized for looking down at her plate when Jason took the microphone. I told her she never needs to apologize for being 29 and in love and learning the hard way that love without respect is just leverage. We still have the house, the one Lorraine and I paid off, the one Jason thought he would get a down payment from. We still take our evening walk past the workshop where she used to hand me nails, and I still have that speech, the 3-minute speech with Lorraine, in it folded in my jacket pocket waiting for the right time. I read it to Emily last Sunday, just the two of us in the kitchen. No microphone, no DJ, no 180 guests, just a father and a daughter and a mother who would have loved to hear it. If there is one thing I want you to take from tonight, it's this: a man who will steal your voice in front of your family has already told you who he is. Believe him the first time. Protect your speech, protect your story, and never, ever let anyone tell you that your love makes you soft. Softness built that barn, softness paid for that dress, softness is the reason 180 people went silent when they heard the truth. If this story meant something to you, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tell me in the comments, has someone in your family ever tried to silence you to keep you from telling the truth? I read every single one. Let me know where you're watching from tonight and what time it is, and I'll see you in the next story. I want to tell you about the money because in these stories, people always ask about the money, and I want to be honest with you. I did not ask Emily to pay me back for the $47,000, not $1, because a father's gift is not a loan, and I did not want her to carry that on top of everything else she was already carrying. But I did call the Whitmore estate, and I did get a partial refund for the open bar that Jason's friends abused, and the extra hour the band played after Jason left. They refunded me $1,200, and I put that money in a new account in Emily's name for when she is ready to try again, if she ever wants to try again, with someone who knows how to hold a microphone and how to hold a family at the same time. I also want to tell you about Lorraine's ring, because I have not told you about Lorraine's ring yet, and it matters. Lorraine had a simple gold band, nothing fancy. She picked it out herself at a hardware store. Of all places, we were buying hinges, and she saw it in a small jewelry case by the register and said, "Walt, that's the one." It cost $89 in 1987. She wore it every day for 32 years, through roofing seasons, through raising Emily, through cancer treatments that took her hair but never took that ring off her finger. At the wedding, Emily wore that ring tied with a blue ribbon around her bouquet, so Lorraine could walk with her down the aisle, even though she wasn't there. When Jason grabbed that microphone, he knocked Emily's bouquet, and that ring fell onto the barn floor and rolled under the head table. No one saw it except my sister, Martha. Martha crawled under that table in her good dress in front of 180 people and found it and put it in her pocket and handed it to me later that night when Emily was crying in the bridal suite and Jason was gone. And the band had finally started playing again, softly, respectfully. Brown-eyed girl, the song Jason tried to use to replace my speech. Martha said, "Lorraine would have been proud of you tonight." Walt, I